Hi, I'm Dr. Joanie Davis, audiologist and owner of Davis Family Hearing. We have 5 offices in the Tampa Bay region on the west coast of Florida. Welcome to another episode of Here Today. I'm particularly excited about this week's episode because it's probably one of the most interesting and rewarding cases I have ever experienced in my career. And I think both Melissa and I feel, this is Melissa, that her story needs to be shared, particularly because it's a story of strength. I normally get very technical about what we have to offer as audiologists in the hearing healthcare industry about technology that goes beyond hearing aids. But today, I would just like Melissa to have a chance to tell her story. I'm going to give you a little bit of history so she can take the camera because she's very good at talking about what she's just been through. In February of 2020, so February of this year, Melissa ended up in the hospital and contracted bacterial meningitis. A lot of things happened in the hospital that I'm constantly asking for clarification from her caregiver, Heather. She knows every single little detail, which is another reason why Melissa is here today. But at the end of the day, she was left with bilateral deafness. She had normal hearing before then. She has a 3-year-old and an 8-year-old, and she worked as a waitress up until then. A waitress. You were a waitress, correct? Did you tend bar as well, or were you a waitress?
I was
Before,
a waitress.
A waitress, okay.
And bartender.
And a bartender. She had a very active life, worked in a very noisy environment, lots of loved ones, and a very social person. And then all of a sudden she could hear nothing. So if you've ever been in a hearing booth and you were asked to respond to the beeps, press the button or raise your hand when you hear the beep, Melissa heard absolutely nothing, which I assure you is not a fun experience to sit in that booth and not be able to press the button at all. She went to several physicians before she made it into my office, and unfortunately it was 7 months after she was deafened before she finally made it into my office. So just take a minute and think about what it's like to have normal hearing and go to complete and total deafness and not hear a thing for 7 months, particularly when you have a 3-year-old who's starting to put sentences together and communicating with her mother. By the time she came into my office, she was with a surgeon, and that particular surgeon only wanted to put a cochlear implant in her right ear. And the reason is because when you have bacterial meningitis, the cochlea, where a cochlear implant is inserted, and I'll just take a quick moment. I'll do another video talking about cochlear implants later, but a cochlear implant is an implant that a surgeon, an otolaryngologist typically, inserts into your inner ear to electrically stimulate your hearing nerve. The reason we do this is because hearing aids won't help. There's no function left in the inner ear, so we have to replace it with electrodes that stimulate the nerve to the brain. Typically, the cochlea, or the part where the electrode goes in, is membranous and easy to insert. But when you have bacterial meningitis, your cochlea starts to harden or turn into bone. It makes the prognosis very poor for a cochlear implant because the surgeon has to actually drill into the bone to get the electrode inserted. So basically, by the time Melissa was in my office, she felt kind of hopeless. She didn't think she was ever going to hear again. And the surgeon she was seeing was only going to try to implant the right ear because the left ear was 100% bone, the right ear was about half bone. Long story short, I won't go into all of the details just in the interest of time, but we were able to, because of insurance issues and a whole big team. There were a lot of people that went into this, which makes me feel so blessed for the people that I work with, from my ear, nose, and throat surgeon to Cochlear, the cochlear implant manufacturer, to the hospital that does Dr. Scott Green's, allows him to do surgeries there. That's where he does his cochlear implant surgeries. We were able to get Cochlear to expedite a claim for Melissa's insurance to cover her internal components and her external components to her cochlear implant. Dr. Scott Green performed both surgeries, so it was one surgery implanted both ears for free, and Morton Plant Hospital also allowed him to do the surgery for free. So a lot of people gave, a lot of people were pushing for her, and the reason we didn't just wait on insurance authorization is because it was going to take a very long time, and the longer we waited, the less opportunity she would have to hear. So the less effective the cochlear implant was going to be. So when I first met her, she relied solely on lip reading, basically was just upset and depressed, as you can imagine. She could hear Heather when Heather talked to her, because Heather knew how she knew how to lip read Heather's, but I think she probably did a lot of nodding as well when she didn't actually understand what you were saying. But we couldn't carry on a normal conversation. So today I am happy to turn and talk to Melissa with you and have a normal conversation at a normal level, because we have successfully been able to get her left ear in the normal range and her right ear in the mild range. Now, to be clear, the reason her hearing is in the mild range in her right ear is because the electrode sits right next to the facial nerve, and because she had such a tough ear on that right side, if we go too loud, it stimulates her facial nerve. But we're happy to be in the mild range. There's a lot of people walking around with a mild hearing loss. So she's doing very well, and I'm happy to say that today I can sit here and have a normal conversation with Melissa. You and I have talked a lot about how powerful your story is and how much strength went into overcoming what you've been through. And I kind of wanted to give you a chance to just walk us through beginning to where you are now, how you're feeling now, the hope that you have that you didn't have when you first woke up in the hospital. So go ahead and start at what it was like to wake up in the hospital.
Okay, waking up in the hospital, I remember the tubes that I could feel, and my hands were restrained to the bed, and I couldn't hear. And I remember my mom coming in, and she told me I was very sick. I just wanted to get out. I don't know if I realized at that moment that I couldn't hear. I think it was when the doctor came in that I couldn't hear. And I remember it just being so incredibly scary, people scattering the rooms, and it was just so terrifying. I couldn't move. I remember Heather, and I've known Heather for 4 years, and I didn't even recognize her, to be honest, at first. And she was there every day by my side. I had a lot of hallucinations through this process, which was hard to know what was real and what wasn't. I'll believe what I think's real, but that's another story. What I want to bring from this is to never give up. I remember leaving the hospital, and I got into my mom's car, and I couldn't hear a thing. And I remember hearing all the monitors in the hospital, or what I thought I heard. And it was silent, and it was scary. I was in the hospital a very long time, and I had no time with my babies. I have a 3-year-old and an 8, and my daughter started talking after I got sick. I couldn't hear her, and Heather came in and she put pictures all over the wall, and I might have looked like the craziest person, but I would talk to them and wish them a good day at school. Being a single mom, it was the hardest thing, so I had to fight. I couldn't walk. I couldn't do anything. I had a lot of tremors. And then I think it was a week later, I started having seizures. And I thought to myself, I couldn't give up. I have to fight. My babies need me. I fought so hard. And I begged every day for someone to help me with my ears. And I was just incredibly scared. And when the seizures came, I thought, you know, I just fought for my life. God gave me my life back. There's a purpose. I'm not supposed to leave yet. But yet the struggles kept coming. And the waiting for appointments kept coming. And I remember my first appointment with the audiologist, and I went into the sound room and I couldn't hear a thing. And it terrified me. But I kept praying. And as hard as it was for me, I didn't realize how many in the audience were watching. I would get emails from people I went to high school with, people I went to college with, people I lived around the block from, who have followed my story from beginning to end. And that's what gets me through my darkest moments, when I couldn't put on my clothes, or I woke up and they told me I had a seizure. All those dark moments where I just didn't want to know if I could do it anymore. I kept pushing. And I think people will take hearing for granted sometimes. I know I can be honest with that, because living without hearing for 7 months was one of the hardest thing of my life. Not being able to hear people if they left the room, not being able to hear my children, not being able to help console them or help them with their problems. My son is the most strongest little boy I know, who stood by my side after I got out of the hospital. I remember that his grandparents picked him up to take him to Disney, to give him some time, some space. And I remember waking up from a nap and they were standing right there. He didn't want to leave me. They're incredibly strong children. And I don't know, that I guess they just watch and watch, but you know, the daily things you don't realize, cleaning and you're doing laundry or dishes, or when your mind stirs and you can't just turn on a jam, having to sit through those painful thoughts. It's really hard. And I can honestly say I'm so blessed for my cochlear implants. I remember the first time that I could hear the rainfall, and I just sat there and listened. Every new sound to me, it was like Christmas, when you lose everything and you're not sure if you'll get it back. I'm very thankful for Dr. Davis and my surgeons and the hospital for being just as amazing as they could be, writing things down, making sure that I understood them. It's a scary world when you can't hear, but you just gotta keep fighting. If God saves your life, there's a reason why. Don't give up.
I've come to the conclusion that the reason he saved yours is because you're going to be a motivational speaker and you're going to help other people who are struggling, because you literally almost lost everything, but you've managed to get it back. And one of the reasons you're surrounded by love is because you give so much love. And of course, we are all very thankful for Heather. I always like to say something about Heather, because Heather and I spend a lot of time on the phone.
Yeah, she's been my ears.
So, you know, I think one of the reasons, I'm sure we will do many more of these, because your story is such a big thing that just a little YouTube video isn't going to cover all of it. But in this year that we have all experienced, the 2020 will go down in history with the pandemic that we're in. I think everybody hears so much negative that it's really important that they hear something positive. And I know all of the people who know what you went through and talk to you when you couldn't hear are really enjoying watching you sit here and have a conversation.
Yeah, it's definitely something, you know, when I couldn't hear and then I could hear. I have to remind people sometimes that, you know, my children, my ears are on, you don't have to sign, or, you know, we would make different ways to communicate. Talk to mommy, talk to me in front of me, and that's the only way that they'll understand that I can hear and that my hearing can get better. I wear them constantly, and I take turns with ears. It's super important to me that I get every benefit from them.
You're a rock star. You have far surpassed what anyone thought that you would accomplish. And a lot of that has to go to the two of you's credit. You know, medical professionals can only do so much, but you're the one that stayed upbeat the entire time. So you're a very powerful story, and I'm sure there will be a book from her in the future with everything she's been through. I would like to personally thank Dr. Scott Green, her surgeon, Morton Plant Hospital, Cochlear, our wonderful team at Cochlear, Charlene, Brandy, Katie, Christina. They're the manufacturer that are able to make this happen. If you are struggling, one of the reasons I wanted to put Melissa out here is to show you that there is hope. Even when you are profoundly deaf, there is still hope that you can lead a normal life and be able to hear. So please don't accept that comment, there's nothing we can do about it. I have never said that to a patient. If you would like to come in and see one of our board certified doctors of audiology at Davis Family Hearing, please call 352-666-8910. Visit us online at davisfamilyhearing.com and visit one of our 5 locations on the west coast of Florida. And please, 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 if you enjoyed this video, if you want to spread the message of hope, hit the subscribe button. We want to spread the word that there's a lot of good in the world and a lot of positive things in the world, and that we're all here to help each other. But also, if you hit that subscribe button, you can be alerted the next time that Davis Family Hearing posts their next story of hope. Thank you, everyone, for watching.